So good morning and welcome to this session. As it's Valentine's Day, we thought it'd be fitting to deliver this subject, helping your people fall in love with their pension. So you've heard about when Harry met Sally. Today, it's all about when elegant scheme design met beautiful, clever communications to create an enduring pension love story. My name is Jeremy Beament and I am director and co-founder at Nudge, and I'm delighted today to be joined by Nicola Roche from Siemens. Hello, Nikki.
Hi, Jeremy.
So, Nikki, could you just take a moment to introduce yourself and give us a flavour for your people and organisation?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Nikki and I work at Siemens in our Northwest Europe hub. I'm responsible for the delivery of our reward strategy, including our pension scheme. In terms of our people at Siemens, we've got about 15,000 employees in the UK. They're really dispersed across the country and comprised of everything from a 17-year-old apprentice to an 83-year-old. In terms of the gender split, 79% are male and over 60% of our workforce are aged over 40, so older than average. We've also got relatively long service with an average of 9 years, but it's not unusual for people to spend their whole career at Siemens in some of our locations.
Perfect. So thanks, Nikki. Now, I know we've got a lot of Nudge clients who are on the webinar, but for those who aren't, just a very quick 30-second overview as to who we are and why we exist. So our big picture objective is to create better financial futures for everyone everywhere. And the way that we're doing that is shining a light on the world of money by helping our community navigate through this treacherous world of personal finance and make sure that we're empowering long-term behavioral change. I guess the things that our users would say about us are words like ethical, intuitive, personalized, and action orientated. Today, we're going to explore the journey that Siemens have been on to prepare for the auto-enrollment changes of April 2019. Nikki, can you tell us how this project was born? What were the big strategic concerns?
Well, Siemens were early adopters of a defined contribution pension scheme, and we introduced our investor plan in October 2002. Rather than just tinkering around with this scheme a couple of years ago to make sure that it was auto-enrollment compliant for April 2019, we wanted to undertake a full strategic review. We knew that our employer pension contributions weren't keeping pace with our competitors, and this was causing us issues for recruitment and when acquiring and merging new businesses. In addition, our people had told us that adequate retirement savings were their #1 financial worry.
So how did you go about tackling the project?
Our first step was to analyse the current behaviour in our pension scheme. We spent a lot of time doing a deep dive analysis of our pension data and creating our own modelling tools to forecast the future outcomes of many different designs. It highlighted a ticking time bomb. Our population was ageing and 83% of our people were forecast not to achieve the DWP's target level incomes at retirement. This raised a number of concerns for us. It could limit career pathways for new, younger entry-level talent. It could increase our corporate healthcare costs. And also it could result in a less engaged workforce because they're feeling trapped in jobs that they couldn't afford to leave.
Perfect. So for those who are unaware of what the DWP target income model is, could you just give us a quick intro to it?
Yeah, sure. I think like most employers, we had originally based our DC model on targeting 66% of income in retirement, which is a legacy of the defined benefit days. The DWP target income model is more sophisticated and focused on the real world. For example, it acknowledges how much you earn, how much of your target income the state pension will make up, and that your costs in retirement are likely to be lower, like mortgage payments, travel to work costs, and the costs of raising children. We found it really a useful basis for our contribution modelling.
So when you undertook your modelling, did it highlight anything unexpected?
Oh yes, definitely. It was really enlightening and helped to bust some myths that were held internally. For example, our management team assumed that it was our youngest and lower paid people who were least engaged, and would need the most targeting. Our data revealed that this was completely wrong. In fact, it was those aged 30 to 50 that we nicknamed the squeeze middle, who we really needed to target. Our young people were the most engaged and proportionately paying in the highest level of contributions. However, the data highlighted that once our people hit the age of 30 and started to get many other financial commitments, their contributions tended to flatline. Although they were earning more, their outgoings were also far higher, and it was harder for them to free up the cash to save more.
Yeah, I think we're huge advocates of taking data-driven decisions because there are all kinds of assumptions, aren't there? So to give you a couple of examples of things that we've found at Nudge, older people don't like engaging on mobile. That's not correct. Only lower paid people struggle with budgeting. That's not correct. It's not about how much you earn, it's about how much you spend. So it always has to be about really analysing that information to make those evidence-based decisions. So having shattered some of those assumptions, what was the design, that elegant design, that you decided to take forward?
Well, the easiest route to follow would have been to simply increase our contributions across the board to 1.5 times matching, in line with the new auto-enrolment requirements. But we didn't want to do this because we wanted to deliver real behavioural change, not to just rely on apathy. It also wouldn't have met any of our strategic objectives. So we decided to use nudge theory through a combination of clever scheme design and personalised communications to encourage our people to contribute more. We did this by offering enhanced company match contributions, particularly targeted at those who were least engaged, and encouraging people to increase their contributions to the 5 to 7% mark. The design was based on the modelling we did to determine what would be needed to achieve 100% of the DWP target incomes after a career at Siemens. If our people wanted to achieve a certain lifestyle of more than 100% of their target income, we would encourage it through our communications, but not through the matching company contributions. We viewed this as their own personal choice.
Yeah, definitely. And I think just my view on this is auto-enrolment has been incredible. It's been such a success of getting more people into pension. But now that we've got through that initial tranche of auto-enrolment, it's time to actually take it away from people being a member of a pension due to apathy and actually getting them to make active decisions. So actually understanding this is how much I want to and need to contribute, and this is where I want to invest my pot. So delighted to see that Siemens have taken that route. So this represented a pretty big step change. How did you manage to get buy-in to implement this project in what is a big business?
Yeah, well, it's fair to say that getting buy-in was probably the hardest part of the entire project. Siemens take a very cautious approach to risk, so implementing change of this sort requires very careful planning. As an HR team, we had to be crystal clear on the problem we were trying to solve, how much it would cost and what the benefits would be. This involved persuading our heads of business units, the Executive Management Board, the UK Pension Strategy Committee, and the pensions governance function at our Munich HQ. On top of this, we went through a 3-month consultation process with our people. It was important that they also understood why we were making the changes and how they were going to be impacted. Essentially, this was the start of our communications process.
Yeah, I can only imagine how tough this was to get through the business. So all power to you for that tenacity. So now let's move on to looking at your communications process. So what did pension comms look like at this point?
Well, as a business, we've always taken pension comms really seriously and invested heavily in it with specialist pensions communications agencies. In the past, we created many, glossy communications and even animated videos. One of the more memorable ones was a video campaign called Don't Be a Wilf, and it featured Wilf, who hadn't saved into his pension and ended up living in a caravan eating baked beans. Meanwhile, his daughter, Rita Rightway, had saved diligently and was enjoying holidays in the Bahamas. The problem was, although these campaigns might have looked great and won us awards and delivered lots of video views, they didn't deliver any real behavioural change on the part of our people.
Yeah, I think that's a story we hear a lot from reward and pension managers. Why do you think that is?
I think there are several reasons. Firstly, our message was always generic. Whether you weren't contributing anything to a pension or were nearing a lifetime allowance, you received pretty much the same communication. Secondly, we never varied the message. It was always one-dimensional preaching about paying more, but without giving our people any extra help on how they could unlock that extra money to pay more.
Definitely. So the evidence we see at Nudge is that the more you personalize, the more likely people are to take notice. The more likely they are to take notice, the more likely they are to take action. The more likely they are to take action, the better their financial outcomes. And if I was to give just one other recommendation to people out there listening, don't make it all about pensions, even if it's a pension communication. So the evidence we see is clear that if you preach to people, you must pay more into your pension, not only do they not do that, but actually in some cases, the evidence is clear that they actually reduce their engagement with their pension plan. So actually, why don't you start talking to people about pension plans around stuff that's going on in their lives? So I'll tell you more about this later, but for example, how do you save money on your utilities bills, for example, to be able to afford extra contributions to your pension plan? So I think that's really when we first started our conversation around implementing a personalized financial education strategy for you. Now, for those of you who haven't seen Nudge in action before, it really comprises of two key parts. So each individual gets their own personalized platform that's full of information and tools in order to help them make better personal financial education decisions and decisions around their reward and benefits. But the real secret sauce is about how we come and pull people into the service in a timely manner. The way that we do that are through what we call nudges, which can be delivered to people via email, SMS, or WhatsApp, however they prefer. And they're typically delivered in line with change. So, for example, there might be a legislative change that impacts you in a particular way because you've got a child of a particular age or you earn a particular amount, or there might be a change to the company pension scheme that impacts you in a particular way because of your contribution structure. Now, because these nudges are highly personalized to each individual and because they're delivered just at that moment when people need to make a decision, they're much more impactful. And that then leads people into the platform for them then to fulfill whatever that financial education need is and help them fulfill it. So our user design follows that of a lot of popular consumer platforms, so things like Instagram and Twitter and LinkedIn and so forth. And that's because 4 billion sets of eyeballs already know what they're doing. So what you're trying to do is reduce any kind of friction so that when people land on it, they know exactly what they're doing. We're trying to pull people in with eye-catching images, eye-catching headlines that are personalized to them. So, Nikki, at this point in your evolution, I think it's accurate to say that you hadn't really provided any financial education before?
Yes, certainly not on this scale. The only thing we'd done at this point was to simply signpost our people towards statutory bodies like Pensions Wise. However, as well as changing our pension structure, we were also in the process of implementing an entirely new flexible benefits plan. So to underpin both of these changes, we wanted to embed an approach to financial well-being that enabled our people to better manage their money, not just their retirement savings. One of the fundamental things for us when selecting Nudge was that it would give us the platform for creating personalised communication that we've been missing.
Yeah, and I think that's where everyone's favourite topic, those 4 wonderful letters, GDPR, reared its head. There's still a lot of confusion out there about how to deliver personalised comms in a GDPR compliant way. And I know that Siemens take this very, very seriously. So you spent a lot of time working through this with your data protection and InfoSec teams. How did you manage it?
You're certainly right there. For Siemens, what we were proposing was a complete departure. And as I mentioned earlier, we have a low risk culture. So again, as an HR team, we had to work really closely with our data protection and InfoSec teams to help them understand that what we wanted to do was a legitimate use of the data and that it was secure. We were really impressed by how flexible Nudge were and how closely you work with our InfoSec team. And in the end, we didn't get any complaints as a result of their campaign. even from the handful of usual people who complain whatever we do.
Yeah. So that was a great result. Now, I'd like to explore how we approach the comms on your new pension design. As you said previously, all your communications previously were vanilla and hadn't really brought about any behavioural change. And so what we put together with you was a personalised campaign with 26 different flavours that were pertinent to the different ages, salary and contribution structures of different people. It had to be about engaging people with pensions through their own lives. It had to be unique and eye-catching, attention-grabbing, jargon-free, lots of clear calls to action. It has to be action-orientated. So there was also a lot of data that we had around when we could deliver these, what time of day different types of people are more likely to engage with with these particular messages, and also whether people prefer to receive them via an email or SMS or WhatsApp. So people do look at information at different times in different ways, and you have to make sure that you're personalizing in that regard. So let's have a look at a few examples. So yeah, although there were these 26 different flavors, here's number one, the ground squirrels. So this was your group of people who are currently not making any contributions. And the major here, it was all about the affordability of making sure that they're able to save money through different budgeting techniques, saving money on their utilities and so forth, so that they could see that it wasn't a huge mountain to climb to be able to afford a pension. So it was not just you must pay into pension, it's about spending that message in an effective way. Another example here are the seals. So what I've learned through this process is that there is no mood so dark that a surprised owl or a surprised seal cannot lift it and solve it. And then a third example here, the top dogs. So these were the guys who were already making really good contributions, and it was all about congratulating them. So in behavioral economics, where you award people, I guess kudos and points for making good decisions, it does work. So the big example out there are, and probably the world's most successful organization at doing it, are Weight Watchers, who do it fantastically. And that was what creating this, that the top dogs was all about. So Nikki, we now come to the all-important question of, did it work? So can you take us through the results? First off, you were looking to change behavior around employee contributions. Did this happen? And can you explain what people are seeing on their screen here?
Yeah, sure. So I'm delighted to say that all the data suggests that it did work. The size of the bubbles that you see here reflects the number of people changing their contributions at each level. Of the 11,000 people we targeted, 2,500 of them changed their pension contributions in our flexible benefits enrolment window, which is a first for us. 90% of these increased their contributions by, on average, 2.1%, with most moving their contribution to the 6 and 7% area to maximise the company matching contribution they received. We saw a third of people increase their contributions by over 30%. And we did have a small number of people who reduced their contributions, but this was mainly down to hitting the annual or the lifetime allowance.
Yeah, so that is fantastic. But the real acid test here is whether these additional contributions made an impact on retirement outcomes. So here we're looking at the original state of play when you did your analysis. So basically green is good and the darker red it goes is bad. So these were the people, I guess your percentage of people who were achieving that 100% DWP outcome. Now let's view some early indications of the impact that this has had. So I guess this is a bit of a ta-da moment. There we go.
Well, it looks completely different. And whilst we've still got some more analysis to do, our initial projections have shown what a dramatic effect this one campaign has made on retirement outcomes. Before, it was only in the very lowest pay band, where the state pension makes up a much larger proportion of someone's target income, that the majority of our people are on track to meet the 100% of their DWP target income. Now, the majority of our people on every pay band are on track. And this gives us a great foundation on which to continue to build further improvements.
Yeah, so I think we need to give a balanced approach in this webinar. So if we're going to be devil's advocate here, how do we know that it was the financial education and the method of delivery that made the difference?
Well, firstly, as an HR team, we noticed it actually got people talking about pensions. Because the campaign was so different for us, it seemed to break the taboo of discussing pensions at work. In some offices, we had people comparing which animal they received, sharing images and saying things to us like, I increased my pension contribution because I didn't want to be a llama anymore. Yeah. More than that, though, the data we get from Nudgeonomics demonstrates the difference in engagement. As well as being able to track interactions with emails, we could also see that there was a 500% increase in the number of unique page views on Nudge. There was also a big shift in terms of what people were learning about on the platform. Pensions-related topics went to 7 out of the top 10 most popular pages on Nudge and made up all of the top 3. Previously, they only made up 3 of the top 10, and they didn't even feature in the top 3.
That is great. And as a result of the Nudgeonomics analysis, we can also show that only 6% of people who didn't receive a nudge changed their pension contributions. Employees who'd been regular nudge users before this campaign were 9% more likely to change their contribution, whereas those who weren't regular nudge users before were 18% more likely to change their contributions. So you can see that that is pretty clear. Now, Nikki, having analysed the success of this campaign, what's next?
Well, we're going back to our key stakeholders and showing them the results. In particular, it's really important to us to go back to our management teams and data protection and InfoSec specialists to demonstrate that this approach works and has delivered the behavioural change that we've been striving to achieve. In terms of our reward strategy, we now have a blueprint for our future communications and are already planning to adopt the same tactics for other key areas of saving. For example, our share incentive plan.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely spot on. The message, I guess, to the people listening is that this approach can work with pensions, it can work with share schemes, it can work with flexible benefits, it can work with bonus sacrifice, whatever your reward objectives are, by delivering this highly personalised messaging and financial education, it will improve outcomes. So I have to say, Nikki, that was brilliant. So thank you very much indeed for sharing your insight, and the Siemens story is hugely appreciated. You are a fantastic organisation and brilliant reward team. So it is greatly appreciated. So now with auto enrolment coming through this next stage in April, this is that perfect opportunity. Your organisations are spending thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of pounds, if not millions of pounds on these contributions. What value are you actually getting from it? So rather than just relying on this apathy of, oh, I'm now in a pension plan, I'm going to be fine, it's now time for comp and bens people, reward people, pensions people to really take this on to the next level and get people to make active decisions about their futures. So I'll leave you with that thought. So thank you very much indeed again, Nikki. Much appreciated.
Thanks.